Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Tidwell. I'm with Aeratis Porch Products, and I'll be conducting this webinar this morning. I want to thank everybody for the time you dedicated this morning to learn and understand the Aeratis products. I will try to be as quick, brief, and succinct as possible, and I will try to get you provide as much information about the Aeratis product as possible. So let's get started by talking about why Aeratis was created. Essentially, back in early 2000s and over the last actually 2 decades, we noticed an emerging trend across the country. The desire for a front porch for homeowners was dramatically increasing, but there was a huge problem because the quality of wood was dramatically decreasing. So over the last decade, you guys can see on the upper left-hand corner of the screen in front of you that the percentages were continuing to grow for the number of homes being built with porches. But as you can see from some of the photographs, the use of wood created significant problems. Now, a lot of you have talked to homeowners or contractors or folks in your communities, and people have asked questions similar to the one I get asked all the time. Homeowners usually, if I get a chance to speak with them, they ask me, say, well, Chris, my grandmother had a porch and it lasted over 100 years and she never had to replace it. Now, since she's passed on, I've had to replace it twice. Why is this? Well, I usually get, most of you have seen this photo online, and I try to give this example, and I just let people know the reality is wood is just not what it used to be. Back in the early 1800s, when trees were harvested, they were grown to ripe old ages, 150 to 250 years old. They were cut down, they were hewn, the wood boards were ripped and quartered, and then turned into tongue and groove boards for front porches or exterior living space. And then they were actually coated with lead-based paint, which people don't realize this, but lead-based paint actually reduced the fungal decay. So looking at these two pieces of wood today, you can tell distinctly the huge difference between the growth rings. Where this really becomes affected is the actual, the density of the wood is dramatically different. Even back in a few years ago, the folks down at LSU did a study looking at the different types of treating methods and how that affected wood outside. What these folks found down at LSU was there's only one type of treating method that is acceptable or adds enough parts per million to reduce or stop fungal decay. And you guys wouldn't believe what they found, but essentially what they stated was creosote is the only treating method that adds enough parts per million to stop fungal decay. Well, all of you realize that we cannot interact or interface with creosote because it's poisonous and toxic to humans. But this is what they found, and this created a huge, the problem that we see today with the low density wood and the lack of good chemicals to actually treat wood, or the chemicals actually being toxic to humans, has really created a problem because consumers have that demand or the desire to have a front porch. But then we're seeing problems with materials that will actually survive or last in that environment. So this is why Aeratis was created. Now let's take a look real quick at the actual manufacturing of Aeratis and how it's made. One of the things that we try to focus on is making sure the product has the right density. Notice as this product's running through the shaper and going through the cooler, that it's actually running at about 3 feet a minute. We do this so that we can control and maintain the density of every board foot. This allows us to have the same performance characteristics on every single board we make. I'm gonna pause this right here for you just for a second because I want everybody to notice one of the things that we do that allows us to offer a lifetime warranty, including thermal expansion and contraction, is one of the tricks we do when we're manufacturing this product is this puller right here is actually pulling the product through the extrusion process. We actually have this puller pulling slightly harder than the product's being forced through the extrusion process to help elongate the product. So if you will, just imagine for a minute you were to take a rubber band and stretch it and then cool it, put it in a freezer, and that rubber band would stay kind of it would be frozen under stress. So then when you heat it up again, the rubber band would then relax. So as we're manufacturing this product, we actually pull it through the extrusion process so that we're slightly elongating it. And then right before we package it up and send it out into our distribution centers, we actually reheat these boards, and then they relax and they're no longer under stress. So that relaxing, along with the density, helps us to be assured that our product will never expand and contract. Let me continue this. You can see see how this is actually manufactured. So the board's coming through, going through the cooling process here. All the water's being removed from the cooling process through the blowers or dryers. Here's that puller that pulls the product or helps elongate it. And then we have an inline cutter. So we do make custom lengths for folks, but we make 12, 16s, and 20s normally. Notice our embossing wheel is 36 inches. We can move this across the embossing wheel so that we don't have a repeating pattern on every board. And then of course, putting the protective film onto the product. All right. One of the things that Aeratis is fully committed to is making sure that everything that we manufacture is historically accurate. Everything that we make has historical precedence dating back to the early 1800s. One of our focuses over the years has been to make sure that we have been approved in 48 states for National Register and Historic Places replacement. The board faces, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that's our heritage and our traditions line. And I will give you guys the inside story of why we make the product 7/8. When we manufacture this, we could have made this product any thickness or any size that we wanted to, but we paid a historian and an architect to go back and find out what the exact size of wood boards were in the early 1800s when they were installed on houses. And what they found was all the boards were a little over an inch thick when they were rough. They would be planed down, sanded, and once they were sanded down to real smooth and ready to install, then 2 coats of lead-based paint would be applied to the product, and the measurement would be exactly 7/8. So everything that we make is exactly 7/8 to match what was done in the early 1800s, whether it's our traditions and heritage line or our legacy line on the right-hand side. And for you folks listening, I have a nice introduction, hopefully for this coming year, sometime in early April. Down in the bottom, you notice that there's a 12.5-inch board down there. We will be introducing a 12.5-inch stair tread over the coming weeks, and this will be available in early April. And the reason why we made this thing 12.5 inches, many of you guys know in the lumber business that if a contractor cuts stairs at 11 on 7 for rise and run, and then you put a 5/4 kick plate in front of each one of the stair risers, well, that 11 plus the 5/4 gives you 12. Well, they don't make 2x12s that are 12 inches wide anymore. So contractors end up having to put multiple boards on the steps, and that creates an unsightly look sometimes. So we decided to go back and look in the 1800s and see what was actually used for these stairs. And what we found was they were 2x18s and 2x16s and 2x14s, and they were cut down so they had a 1/2-inch overhang. So we created a 7/8 by 12.5-inch stair tread, and it is reversible, so it can be used on both sides, and it also can be put on a table saw by a contractor and ripped right down the middle. And then he has 2 boards that he can utilize for picture framing if they want to picture frame it. So notice in the top right-hand corner of that board, it's got a radius, and then the bottom left-hand corner, it's got a radius. This board being reversible, you can have the radius up or you can have the radius down. You can hide it, or you can rip it down the middle and use the radius for the picture frame, whichever you prefer. As I mentioned earlier, over the years we've focused on historic projects. Some of these historic projects are scattered throughout the country, and the vast majority of them are on the National Register of Historic Places replacement. And if you guys have a historic district and it has not been approved yet, please give us a call or contact us, and we can help make sure and walk any project through the approval process for historic replacement. One of our big partners that we advertise with every year is This Old House, because tying the Aeratis product and our focus on historic projects ties in perfectly with This Old House, because a lot of the things they do is restoring houses that are older, or building new houses that look old. So what product better to use than a product that's been approved for National Register and Historic Places replacement if you're building a new house to look old than a product that's been approved for historic restoration. All right, so all that stuff is a little preliminary information. Now let's get into a little bit of market detail and what's going on in the marketplace. In 2015, the NAHB did their last study on eye on the market. They interviewed, or they surveyed hundreds of thousands of homeowners and home buyers and architects. They wanted to find out what the most important features were on a home. And as you can see on the list on the right hand side, there is only one exterior architectural feature listed in the most desirable features for a home, and number 12 being the front porch. We also did another study in 2018 finding out what millennials were looking for in a home, what were desirable, and what did they consider essential and must have. This is the next group of people that will be buying into the home market, or the next big group of people buying homes. And they needed to find out what was important to these folks. And notice down just about 3/4 of the way down the list, 44% of all millennials felt that a front porch was desirable, and 34% felt like it was essential and must have. So we can see that the trend is continuing to carry on across the nation over the last few years. This is the trend, or number of homes being built with porches. And here are the number of homes being built with porches versus deck. And now I've got it broken down by region, so you can actually notice what region you're in. I am in the East South Central region. And I can tell you, here in Knoxville, just about every home built, I don't even know if you can build a house in Knoxville, Tennessee without having a porch on it. I think it may be against the building codes, because every house you see around here has got porches. So that 94% definitely holds true. And my parents live down in South Alabama, and I can tell you that they actually live on their porch most of the day. So as you can see, breaking down your different regions, you can see what areas were being built with porches. Now, this is 2019. I wanted to show and compare and contrast. This is 2019 data on the number of houses being built with decks. So you can see it's a significantly smaller number in most of the markets except up in New England. Now let's take a look at number of homes, share of homes being built with decks over the course of the years, and see how that's trending. And then I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a shocking piece of data. A lot of people don't realize that this data even exists. But this is the number of homes being built with back porches. As you can see, over 65% of homes built in 2016 were built with back porches. Now, I wish I had newer data on this, but they have not finished all the census data for 18, 19, or 2020. So this is the newest data that we have. And the last piece of data that I'm going to show you guys is one that most people don't realize as well. 40% of all decks are converted to porches within 5 years. Now consider this for a moment. Many of you that are on here may have a deck on the back of your house. Now, if you do have a deck, most likely you don't use it for much more things other than a platform for your grill. So you open up your back door, you go out, you flip the burgers over, and you run back in. The reason you do this is because it's either too hot, too cold, rainy, snowy, or there's too many bugs out there. So what they found is the reason why people are converting their decks to porches is because it extends the use of that space by over 3 months. It protects from bugs and the exterior elements, and you can also do semi-climate controlled. Also, they found that it adds significant value to the home. Not only does it provide privacy on the back of your house, but it also provides a great value for homeowners looking for these porches. So you go back and look at the data, people have a huge desire for a front porch, but now we're seeing this huge demand for people having that back porch as well. Across the nation, consumers are looking, or homeowners are looking to spend more time outside. And if you look at the trends in home building, the houses are getting smaller, more amenities on the inside, and people are spending more time outside. Now, we're not the only folks that have access to this data. We've got plenty of competitors across the country, but I wanted to make sure I introduce you to these competitors, because we're going to go through some of the data and show you how we are different than a lot of our competitors. So on the synthetic side, we've got Coma, Wolf, and AZEK are fighting for that tongue and groove porch space. And depending on the region, you may or may not encounter some of these folks. And then in the wood area, you get the wood treaters. And many of you guys are familiar with these product brands. But I have another one up here that I don't think that a lot of folks consider a competitor. And I'll explain why they're a competitor. Concrete. Across the country, concrete has become a major competitor. The reason being is because a lot of contractors have to warranty their work and material for at least a year when they build a home. Well, contractors get a little put off when these tongue and groove boards start twisting, buckling, cupping, and warping, and then they are now turning to concrete. They don't want to deal with these issues. So let me talk about a few of these challenges that come with front porches that contractors and homeowners are dealing with that some folks don't even realize. And I'm not going to read every one of these to you, but I'm just going to bring some of these to the forefront that maybe some people don't consider. Porches and decks are completely different. And the first major way that they're different is ventilation. Most composite decking manufacturers require their product to have even airflow on top and on bottom. That means that they require 18 inches of clearance underneath the joist. So that allows the product to stay the same temperature. With the front porch, it's usually not the case because nobody wants people looking up under their house. So they usually have some kind of underpinning or brick or block or something or stone, some kind of work completely sealing up the front of the house. And they may or may not have vents. But with that lack of ventilation, it causes condensation and it causes uneven airflow and it causes the heat differential between the surface of the boards and the underside. A lot of people don't consider that the front porch is a high traffic area. Your back deck may get used by you and your family sometimes, but everybody who comes to your front door, who knocks on the door, whether it's the mailman, whether it's the neighbors or friends and family coming over, everybody's going to walk from the front steps right to the front door, and that's going to create a high traffic area right there in the front. Uneven shadowing and shading can create difference in fading of materials across the front porch in a different area because the sun typically travels the same route over the course of a year, so the shadows and shades are going to be almost exactly the same if you keep your bushes trimmed and you got a rail system or columns. Another one that people don't realize, another major challenge when it comes to front porches or even most exterior living space, is low E glass. I will tell you that one of the ways that Aeratis is different is most of our competitors, if you install their product within 30 inches of low E glass, you avoid the warranty. But with Aeratis, this is not the case. You can put Aeratis right up next to low E glass and we do not void the warranty. You maintain your warranty because of the density of our product the product is so dense that low E glass really doesn't affect it so much over the course of a day. The next one, number 7, ADA slip compliance. Aeratis is ADA slip compliant, both wet and dry, where other products are not. Aeratis is also manufactured to be mold resistant. You can see a picture on the right-hand side over there. We've got a product with some mold on it. Aeratis is actually manufactured with CPVC or chlorinated polyvinyl chloride. And if the food source is removed, Aeratis product will actually kill the mold with that chlorinated polyvinyl chloride. And the last big challenge that's probably our number one inquiry across the country is how do we create a waterproof space? How do we create a second-story balcony where we got a ceiling underneath and stop the water from coming through? So these are some challenges that are faced when it comes to porch applications. Not many decks won't need to be or are required to be waterproof, but a lot of porches are required to be waterproof. And these challenges are completely different than most composite decking manufacturers have to face. And that's why we engineered this product to tackle this category. We actually engineered Aeratis to tackle some of these, for tackling all of these challenges. Now, probably the greatest challenge that we all face in all exterior living space products is thermal expansion and contraction. And I'm going to break this down for you really quickly, but essentially what it is the sun beats onto the surface of the product, heats it up over the course of the day. And notice I mentioned earlier how porches are typically sealed up. And if they do have vents, Sally homeowner throws a bush in front of these vents and doesn't allow the air to flow through there. So as the sun heats up the surface of the product, it stays nice and cool underneath. And in this exact example this test we ran in Louisiana, the surface of the board heated up to 135 degrees, while the bottom side of the product stayed at a cool 68 degrees. That creates a 67-degree heat differential. And this right here is what causes wood to absorb moisture coming from underneath, where there's little to no ventilation. So all that moisture and condensation on the bottom of the board gets absorbed into the wood, and that forces it to expand with the heat. And essentially what's happening on the surface of this product, whether it's synthetic or wood or whatever it is, the molecules start to be excited. And as the molecules start to move faster and faster, it needs more space to move, and it starts to expand. So this right here is probably the number one major issue facing in all exterior living space products. or the challenge that's the hardest to overcome. So now let's look at some examples of what happens when this occurs. In the upper left-hand corner, we see a tongue and groove pine product that was primed and painted on all 6 sides and painted every year for 3 years, and that's what it looked like. So that's what pine flooring, tongue and groove, kiln dried after treated flooring looks like after 3 years. The upper right-hand corner was a very poorly polyethylene and wood fiber product that was manufactured, and that product right there, when the sun hit the surface of those boards, every one of them expanded about a 64th of an inch. And if you guys, any of you mathematicians out there, want to do the math on it real quick, if you have 125 boards on a porch and all of them expand 64th of an inch, I think you'll find that 5 boards have to be removed, or we take up the space of 5 additional boards. So you see, this is what happens when expansion and contraction or buckling starts to happen. The project on the bottom left-hand side is an interesting story. I actually went to this project, and Sally homeowner, what she did is she had a tongue and groove wood floor, and she was tearing it up to replace it because it did not look so good after a few years. She went down to the local lumber yard and told Bill at the lumber center and said, "Hey, Bill, I want to replace my floor, but I don't want these tongue and groove boards anymore. What I want those boards that just go next to each other, the ones with the spaces between them. I want those." So Bill writes up a ticket for a composite deck, and she goes out and replaces it. Now notice in the upper left-hand corner of that photo, that's a rug being pulled back. So this is a complete covered porch, almost like an interior, inside kind of living space. But as Bill the contractor, or John the contractor, started installing these boards, Sally homeowner said, hey, wait a minute. I don't want those big gaps in my boards. I want those boards closer together. I don't want my heels going through it. I don't want rings to slip through it. I don't want silverware being stuck in it. I want those boards close together. So John accommodated her wishes and stuck those composite deck boards together. And notice what happens when you put composite decking in a porch application. You get them too tight, you end up with buckling, because expansion and contraction occurs in composite decking. I think all major manufacturers warn about this. So you have to make sure you space these things. I believe every one of them, as you get them closer to the ground, you have to create a greater and greater gap between the boards because it absorbs more and more moisture, and the heat differential is significantly greater. So be careful when people are looking to put down a porch and use composite decking on there, because they really have, if they're going to put composite decking on there, they really have to follow that gapping. It's the gapping recommendations for manufacturers, or we can just steer them in the right place and have them put a tongue and groove porch floor down from Aeratis. Now on the bottom right hand side, that's just what happens when a contractor, they try to do their best on this project. And I felt so bad for this guy because he sealed up the lead edges. He did a pretty decent job sealing up the end of the board. But before he could get the final coat of primer on the surface, you can see those boards started buckling up on him. This is essentially what happens when with thermal expansion and contraction. But now I'm going to show you guys what happens when you have low ventilation and low E glass in one space. Notice that these joists are tucked down inside of gravel, and right in front of that sliding glass door at low E glass window, the sun's reflecting off of that glass, bouncing down onto that floor, and absolutely destroyed this product. So this right here is what a lot of contractors are having to deal with. As you can see, most of these are unsightly. This is unsightly. So what does the contractor think? He says, well, I'm not going to deal with any of this anymore. I'm not going to deal with wood. I'm not going to deal with synthetics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour concrete. Well, I don't know that concrete's actually the solution either, because on Sackcrete's website, it actually says in their blog, if you don't want concrete to crack, leave it in the bag. As you can see that if you end up with a cracked concrete patio or floor, it can be a real mess, because removing this is a lot more expensive than tearing up a couple of boards and replacing them with. When a crack happens, or these ugly big cracks happen, it becomes a major issue, and to get that stuff out of there, it's very, very expensive. Well, in this presentation, guys, it's not all doom and gloom, because I wanted to show you guys a compare and contrast Aeratis with some of these other products that have failed. This is a project that we have a running case study on. It's in Charleston, South Carolina. It's been down for a little over 9 years, 8 or 9 years. It was painted Charleston green, which is essentially black or gunmetal green. There's no ventilation underneath it. It's got Grace ice and water shield. It was installed with T-nails. This is the 2-inch pneumatic floor nailers. And this is what it looks like after 9 years. This is every year we go back and we look at how this product installed, how it's performing with its paint, and how it's doing being painted black because it's got a western exposure there in Charleston. And if you notice on the left-hand side of that photo, the entire underside is sealed up. The reason why they put Grace ice and water shield and plywood underneath it is because there's actually a wine cellar underneath there. And if you look up above where the logo for Aeratis is, that's actually the porch looking down the side from this side over here on the left. Look down the porch on that side, and that porch at this place is mission critical that it is waterproof, because there are hundreds of bottles of wine up under that porch down in the basement, and that basement was dug out and down below that porch. So we could not allow any water to get in there, and I believe that Aeratis is the only manufactured product that warranties its product in a waterproof application. So let's look at some other comparison and contrast between us and our competitors. The upper left-hand corner, we've got an AZEK Porch. After 9 months down in Louisiana, this project was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they had an issue with mold growth. A lot of folks hear AZEK talk about how their product is pure PVC. If anybody would take just a moment and go look up their ICC report, you would see that AZEK actually uses a filler called agrofiber in their formulation. And agrofiber is basically agricultural components used as a filler to reduce the amount of PVC that they're using. The problem with using agrofiber is it actually molds pretty rapidly. It's a food source for mold. And this is a big issue that these folks have had for years and years and years. And on this project, it was about $5,000, and the homeowner says, hey, mold's a problem. On the right-hand side is that Charleston project. I just told you guys, it's about $2,300, and the customer says, we absolutely love this project, love the product. And then bottom left-hand corner is KDAT Pine. After 3 years, this is what the wood looks like. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is probably the best testimony or best reference we have across the country. We've been down on this project. This is Oak Alley. It's just outside of Baton Rouge in Louisiana. And it is, it's the house that Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were filmed in with Interview of the Vampire, for any of you guys that saw that movie. And on that property, it's a old plantation home, and they run daily tours through there. So after 7 years, they've walked about 7.5 million people across our floor, and the property owner absolutely loves it. We took his annual maintenance, which averaged about $9 a square foot, or about between $18,000 and $30,000 a year, to maintain his waterproof porch on this huge project. We've taken it down to the cost that it costs to mop or vacuum it daily. That's all he has to do. There's no more maintenance. There's no more tear up. There's no more replace. There's no more multiple paint coats. None of that stuff. And he absolutely loves it because it dramatically reduced his operational cost. One of the things that makes Aeratis unique is I believe we're the only manufacturer in the building materials category that warranties or guarantees our product will never expand and contract, and we put it right there in our warranty. A lot of people talk about manufacturer defect, but we put it in our warranty that a product will never expand and contract and never have any adverse effects from expansion and contraction. One of the things that we do with every truck of product that we manufacture is we take a piece, we will take several pieces out of the run, we soak it in water for 30 days, we bring it down to -124, and we install it over the top of plywood and a heating grate, and we force it together with compression jacks, as you can see in the left-hand side. We then take it through from -124 up to 160 degrees, and we do this in 30-minute increments. So it goes up to 160, back down to -124. We do this, we install it with no fasteners, and we do this for one key reason. We want to make sure that every truck of product that we manufacture never expands and contracts. That way that folks like you guys and folks like me have the assurance that we need to go out and tell a customer, hey, this product right here is not only guaranteed not to expand and contract, they test it on every truck of material they make, and it's in the warranty. So we do this to make sure that we keep our word to everybody and make sure that everybody understands this product will never expand and contract. Let's look at some other performance characteristics. We do make a Class A fire rated product. The product is, all of the products that we manufacture are ADA slip compliant. Scroll down to the decay resistance on ASTM 1413. People ask me how long Aeratis will last. Well, I don't know, because we've only been around since 2005. But according to ASTM testing standards, our product will last over 220 years with no decay. And then water absorption, about 1.21%. We got folks from all over the country on this webinar today, and I wanted to make sure you guys understood what that water absorption number means. So most of our competitors absorb 13 to 17% of its weight in water. But some of you guys are familiar with what's called a flash freeze. I was introduced to it a couple of years ago. I was in Philadelphia and it was raining. And then this big emergency thing came over the radio and said, flash freeze warning, flash freeze warning. And I was going, what? What were they talking about? A flash freeze? Are they talking about a flash flood? Well, about 30 minutes later, I found out what a flash freeze was, because it was raining 1 minute, and the next thing I know, everything's turning to ice, because it went from about 38 degrees to about 17 degrees in about 30 to 45 minutes. And I learned out what a flash freeze was. But with water absorption, the reason why this is critical is because if a product absorbs its weight in water, and then it doesn't get dried out, or the water doesn't evaporate, as it turns to ice, it's going to expand. And as it expands, it will destroy the center or core of products, like a cellular PVC, like an AZEC or a Coma product. Aeratis is not a cellular PVC product. We do not have any foaming agents in our manufacturing process at all. We do not foam our product. It is solid extruded product. Most of our competitors' products weigh about 0.4 pounds per foot. Aeratis weighs 1.2 pounds per foot. So we're 3 times heavier. So our specific gravity is much greater than most of our competitors, or all of our competitors. Many of you are familiar with the last couple of years, we have transitioned to a cap product. The reason why we went to transition to a cap product is because consumers are demanding a better and better and more long-lasting surface. So Aeratis transitioned to an acrylic-based cap, because we found that not only will it maintain its color retention longer and greater, it also allows us to create a harder surface, and it's allowed us to maintain ADA slip compliance on the surface. Typically, the harder a surface is, like a marble, the more slippery it is. But with Aeratis, with our Duratec capping technology, we were able to increase the hardness of the surface of Aeratis while maintaining the ADA slip compliance. So what this means now is there's no more scuffing, it's darn near impossible to scratch the surface of the product anymore with it being an acrylic-based cap. And the other piece is it's only going to fade about 0.5% over 20 years. So now let's take a look at actual products. We manufacture 3 distinct colors: Battleship Gray, Weathered Wood, and Vintage Slate. The Vintage Slate color is exactly the same color as the old slate roofs. A lot of people used to want to match their roof and their porch together. A lot of people like that darker color look, because floors are typically darker rather than lighter, because it doesn't show dirt as well. The links come 12, 16s, and 20s. Now, one thing I want to tell you about the links, everything we manufacture is an inch longer than advertised. So your contractors can take a 12-footer, cut it in half, and then square both ends of the board and still have a true 6-foot board. So we do not make it exactly 12 feet. So it's an inch and a quarter longer than advertised. So you can take 20s and make 10s out of them, and then square both ends and still have a true 10-foot board. And that's the same true with the 16. You can take a 16, cut it in half, then trim both ends to square both edges and still have two 8-footers. The width of the product is exactly 3 1/8, exactly what products were back in the 1800s. The span is 16 inches on center. It's 625 pounds per square foot live load. What this means is you do not have to go to 12 inches on center ever, not even in heat loads, high heat capacities, none of that stuff, not even in heavy snow loads. The reason why we made this 625 pounds per square foot live load is because we wanted it to be able to be used for residential, commercial, and government applications. Most of our competitors are 100 pounds per square foot live load, and that creates problems if you're in the snow load zones up near Rochester, New York, or Buffalo, where you've got all this, where you've got this lake snow, or any state that you have snow load requirements. Now let's look down at the usage. There's really no usage limitation to Aeratis. It can be used on covered or uncovered applications, no ventilation requirement, and it's also approved for waterproof applications, and you can even fasten it directly to concrete. We do offer that installation instructions on the website. Now let's take a look at the legacy product. Many of you are familiar with, back in the day, TimberTech had come out with a product called Fluorizons. It was the first, I believe, 6-inch or 5.5-inch tongue and groove product. Commercial people loved this product because the installation time was cut in half and the fasteners were cut in half. Well, they had a big problem. The product didn't survive, so it created a lot of issues. So this past year, we introduced the Aeratis Legacy product. It is a true 6-inch face. So the face is actually 6 inches, not 5.5. It's 6 inches. So it's very simple coming up with cost per square foot for your customers. It comes in Battleship Gray, Weathered Wood, and Vintage Slate. The span, it's 16 inches on center, is a little over 625 pounds per square foot live load. It can be used for covered and uncovered applications, no ventilation requirements, and can be used in waterproof applications as well as direct concrete. Are you guys noticing a pattern here? All of the products are the same performance characteristics. As I mentioned earlier, we are introducing this year a 12.5-inch stair tread. It will come in battleship gray, weathered wood, vintage slate. It will come in 16-foot lengths. It is going to have a true 12.5-inch face, and it is reversible. Everything that Aeratis manufactures is completely reversible. You can use either side of the product. So if there's any forklift damage on one side from handling and moving it, have your contractors flip the board over. The product does have protective film on one side, but that does not mean that's the surface side. Either side can be up. That protective film is on that product just to remind contractors what to do and what not to do. Other items we do have all the trim pieces. We do have the universal porch plank for picture framing. But probably one of the most exciting products I get most excited about is our Aeratis Traditions product. I get excited about this because this is for folks that have champagne taste but a beer pocketbook. This is our paint ready line. It comes 12, 16s, and 20s. It's a 3.5-inch face. Notice the performance characteristics exactly the same. It's 16 inches on center. It's 625 pounds per square foot live load. The repaint cycle, if you use a recommended paint, is every 7 to 10 years. That is dramatically different than wood. Typically with wood, it's every year or every other year you have to repaint. And the beautiful thing about this product, if your customers buy this product and when you sell them the paint, or if they purchase the paint from the paint store, they send the warranty and the rebate in to us, and we give them the paint for free in the form of a rebate. And you only paint the surface of the boards. Just a minute, I'm gonna show you guys a paint instructions video. This product can be used in covered or uncovered applications, no ventilation requirements, and it's approved for waterproof installation and directly over concrete. Let's take a look at that paint instructions video real quick because it's very, very simple. And there's some tricks in here that we show you guys to make sure that we may never have to repaint again, because that 7 to 10 years is in high traffic zones. We have had people paint that film, so we had to put that in the video, guys. So guys, let me tell you the secret behind why we asked them to put acetone on there. Well, earlier I mentioned the repaint cycles every 7 to 10 years in high traffic areas. Because what we're doing is we're essentially creating a chemical bond in the field. We're essentially cleaning the surface with the acetone, but that acetone does a little bit more than just take the oil, dirt, dust, debris off of the surface. It slightly softens the PVC, and it actually robs it of an electron. So then right behind you, when you put the acetone down and you clean it and it evaporates, if you start painting and about, some guy starts acetoning and then gets about 10 feet away, then somebody else starts painting. If you follow it that closely, what happens is then that acrylic-based paint that we're recommending is now bonding to the surface of that PVC board that's slightly softened, and it shares that electron. So it creates a chemical bond on the surface. Then once those two cure back together, it's impossible to remove the paint from there. The only way that the paint doesn't stick perfectly is if there's moisture, dirt, dust, or debris between the paint and our product, because as it cures, they cure together. One thing I wanted to add right here, as we look at how Aeratis holds up after 9 years of use with golden retrievers and kids, is one thing I wanted to point out. Guys, it's not the paint that's the problem. It's what we're painting. Think of it. How many of you guys have cars or seen cars that are older than 10 years old or 15 years old that haven't been repainted, that don't need to be repainted? Well, those cars are metal, and they're using a special paint on that metal. Well, think about how many houses have you seen or pieces of wood that you've seen that that was 10 years old that didn't need to be repainted. Think of it just after a year. After a year, a piece of wood needs to be repainted because it's the wood. Painting the wood is the problem. So when people paint Aeratis, Aeratis is non-hygroscopic, meaning it doesn't absorb water. So the paint, as it lays down on the surface and it chemically bonds to the surface, and with Aeratis not expanding and contracting and not absorbing moisture, the paint never chips or flakes or peels off of it. You have to wear the paint off. So once again, guys, it's not the paint, it's what you're painting that's the problem in the world today. Let's look at a comparison, cost comparison on a project we did down in New Orleans. Many of you guys are familiar with Cafe Du Monde. This is on 817 Decatur Street. When you're sitting there sipping coffee and eating beignets in Cafe Du Monde, you look across the street and you see 817 Decatur Street. This project was done in 2015, I believe. And this was the contractor's quote to replace a balcony using tongue and groove pine boards. You guys can see the cost of everything cost the homeowner about $3.48 per linear foot. The homeowner actually did not end up using the wood. He actually ended up using our Traditions product with a lifetime warranty and got free paint. And the cost was a little over $2.61 per linear foot. So there is significant savings when it comes to using Traditions, and I'm gonna go through why those savings are significant in just a few minutes. But let me show you a compare and contrast, a before and after. Notice the porch on the left-hand side with all that moss and the paint's chipping and flaking off of it. And notice the color. Now look at the one on the right-hand side. That's the Aeratis porch. Exactly the same porches, exactly the same balcony right there. But that's a before and after. Now let's look at the installation real quick and show you guys a quick video. There's no audio on this. I'll walk you through it. You can use screws with Aeratis. We don't recommend it because not only does it take longer, because of human error, you can actually go either higher or lower, and it doesn't make the boards fit together so well. The best way to install Aeratis is with a pneumatic floor nailer. And in this video, they're converting a deck. They took up half the deck boards because they wanted to turn the boards the other way and run the boards perpendicular. So the best fasteners are the 2-inch stainless steel staples. And for many of you guys, if you don't know where to get them, Simpson Strong Tie is the manufacturer of them. I believe every one of you can get Simpson Strong Tie fasteners. As you can see, that staple goes in perfectly. And the reason why we recommend a staple is because the staple penetrates, and as it hits the different densities of wood, it twists and turns and goes different directions. So it's almost like a bent over nail in the surface of the boards. Now let's look at why the installation of Aeratis is so much more cost effective than wood. This is actually a flyer that came out with for Southern Pine flooring for use outside in the balconies or porches. And in that installation, the left-hand side is the front and the right-hand side is the back, and it says, install under covered porches. Treated flooring should not be used on uncovered decks exposed to the elements. Well, on the right-hand side is where we get into the installation savings. It says, do not use pneumatic staple or nail guns. Do not space floor joists further than 16 inches on center. 12 inches on center is preferable. Now remember the wood that for years we would install wood at 24 inches on center, but now they want it at 12 inches on center. Not only do they want you to put it at 12 inches on center, but they don't want you to use a floor nailer. They want you contractors to get down on their hands and knees and either use screws or bang in ring shank or screw shank nails and then punch them in. It's a lot, really excessive and really arduous. So it really extends the installation time, the labor cost of these installations. And think about how fast. Now with a pneumatic floor nailer, with Aeratis, you can put down 130 boards in less than 40 minutes if the framing is ready to go. But with this stuff, it will take a little over 9 hours putting it down with screws, and longer than that if you have to punch in nails on every single joist. Now let's look at our competitors real quick. This comes right off of AZEK's literature. Number one, you cannot install AZEK within 30 inches of low E glass because it will void the warranty. They require ventilation. You cannot install it in a waterproof application. They give multiple warnings about expansion and contraction. You cannot use staples. It is not ADA slip compliant when it is wet. And there is no warranty against any expansion and contraction, buckling, cupping, or warping. It cannot be painted. So let me back up and tell you guys, at any point in time, if anybody has an Aeratis product, let's say they install Battleship Gray or Vintage Slate, and then 10 years from now they decide to change the siding color, they can actually clean the surface of their Aeratis, Vintage Slate or Battleship Gray porch with an acrylic-based cap, clean it with acetone, and then put an acrylic-based paint on top of it and completely change the color of the product to match their new siding. So you do not have to rip out the floor and put in a new floor. AZEK does have a problem with agri-fiber and mold issues, and they are recommended at 12 inches on center, which dramatically drives up the cost of installation and framing. On the Aeratis website, we have all the installation instructions and videos you could possibly need. Recommendations are they're stay at 16 inches on slender. Slope the product away from the house. The reason why we recommend this, because in the National Building Codes for 2014, it recommends and requires that all exterior horizontal applications be sloped 2% away from the house. You can use T-nails, L-nails, staples, or screws. It's best if you run the boards perpendicular to promote water runoff and water shed. A lot of people don't realize why in the early 1800s and back in the early days, why people actually used tongue and groove products. They realized that if you could get the water away from the house, you'd have less of a mold and mildew issue inside of the house. So today we're putting deck boards right up next to the house, and all the water's going down in between the boards, and it's wicking back up under the house, creating moisture and mold problems in the house. So tongue and groove boards actually get the water away from the house and promote a drier interior, because then water's not wicking back inside the house. We do recommend they remove the protective film before the installation to make sure there's no damage or dings on the surface of the boards. And that film is going away this year. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, I may have mentioned it a couple of times in here, all of our boards are double-sided. So if there's a problem, a ding or dent on one side of the board from transportation or any issues, flip that board over and they can use the other side. Let's talk a little bit about framing here. Notice the two different types of framing. One, the boards are running parallel to the structure. The other is running perpendicular. The one on the bottom right-hand side actually costs more because you're using longer lumber and it's less sturdy. As the longer the joists are, the more they vibrate and move as people walk across them. So it creates a shaking situation. I had a house in Alabama, the whole house had to have shake seals put underneath it because the floors moved so much, because they ran these big long spans of framing. In the upper left-hand corner, the framing is much more cost-effective and much stronger. The reason why it's much more cost-effective is because you're using shorter boards. You don't need to use these long timber boards. They broke it down into 8-foot sections. Using 8-foot lumber is much more cost-effective than trying to use 12s, 14s, or 16s to try to frame up a porch. And the one on the left-hand side allows the boards to be run the correct way to promote water runoff away from the house. On the website, you can find other recommendations on how to stop framing issues. So we have all these recommendations so that we just don't have the issues and problems, because as we all know, when contractors install a saturated wet board, and when the water's leaking out of it as they put the screws into it, that wood board is going to dry over time. And as it dries, guess what? It's going to shrink. It's going to put pressure on fasteners. It's going to twist. It's going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. So on our website, we offer all the recommendations that we can to help mitigate these issues. But the number one thing is, when you guys sell them lumber, try to sell them drier lumber. That helps solve the problem for all of it. Due to time restraints, I'm not going to show you guys the waterproof video, but I will tell you that I believe Aeratis is the only product that can be installed and used in a waterproof application. And so essentially, I'm going to go through it quickly. On top of plywood, we recommend a product called Grace Ice and Water Shield. And then on top of that, you can use a single row of sleepers, or you can use a double sleeper, a crisscross sleeper system to help promote the water runoff. And then I'm going to show you real quick, if you use a single sleeper, we recommend cutting channels on the bottom of the sleeper so you don't dam up any water. But if you don't have room underneath the threshold, you can fasten Aeratis directly to the membrane. We just want you to make sure that the contractor knows you want to use a 3-inch screw and you have to hit the joist. All right, one of the things that we do recommend or do offer for commercial projects, you guys that are quoting commercial projects, we do custom links. And on this project here up in Massachusetts, we saved about $85,000 on the project in comparison to wood, because we made the exact length of board. They had no waste. They built the porches off-site and then brought the porches onto site and put them up and bolted them to the wall and put the supports underneath it. So this project, we were able to save them about $85,000 because we did a custom length board for them. We do offer the installation instructions for concrete. So anybody who has poured concrete and it's cracked or ugly or discolored, we do offer a way to cover that up and convert it to a traditional looking porch. And because Aeratis doesn't expand and contract, it can actually be glued and fastened right to concrete without any problems or issues. For you guys that are having contractors right now pouring concrete for porches and balconies, what we did is we put together a cost comparison on a 12 by 12 balcony. This was 18 inches above grade. And notice this is all the materials you would need and the cost of everything you would need to build a 12 by 12 porch, 18 inches off the ground. And then we compared that to concrete, a 12 by 12 concrete porch, 16 inches above grade. And you notice that the cost of building Aeratis is significantly better than pouring the concrete. And when your contractors choose to pour concrete, not only do you lose commission, but it's going to be inevitable. Right in front of the front door, they're going to end up with cracked concrete. So let's make sure that we do everything we can to communicate to contractors. You don't need to pour concrete. There's actually a product out there that will perform. And to help inspire these contractors this year with our stocking dealer program, not only do we offer a buck a board rebate to all stocking dealers throughout the year, this year in participating markets, we're also offering free floor nailers for every unit brought into stock on the initial opening order. So when your contractor comes in and looks for tongue and groove products and looking to compare costs and compare products, you stocking dealers out there, you'll be able to offer a free floor nailer with an Aeratis logo on it, and it will shoot T-nails, L-nails, and staples. And you can get all those from Simpson, Strong Tire, any of the fastener manufacturers that you guys currently are using. And all the tools and everything needed to assemble the nail gun comes with it. And the beauty of this is they can use this on the Heritage and Traditions product. They can also use it on the Legacy product. We're hoping that providing these floor nailers with our brand on it will promote the consistent use of Aeratis for all exterior living space for your contractors. Some other items I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of. If you would like a free display, all you have to do is contact your local Aeratis rep. And at the end of this call, I will give you my information. You'll be able to contact me directly if you don't know who your local Aeratis rep is. Not only will I help you out, but I'll make sure that Aeratis rep gets in touch with you right away. The upper left-hand corner is a painted porch that's in a lumber yard. The bottom left-hand side is a waterproof application. We had a lumber yard that had a lot of waterproof questions, and people wanted to do a lot of waterproofing, so we did a waterproof display for them and hung it on their wall. And on the right-hand side is just a form showing all the literature, samples, everything that Aeratis has to offer to provide all the literature and samples that you need to be able to offer your customers the information they need to make a good buying decision. So all of our literature and samples, everything is free. We don't make you pay for any of this stuff. So if you don't have some, please don't run out and make sure you ask us for it, because we're going to send it right to you. We'll make sure the distributor provides it, or one of the Aeratis reps can come by and drop it off, because it's absolutely free. And we feel it's essential to have it in front of everybody so that the people can make good, positive buying decisions. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that we discuss here today, if we continue, or as in our industry, if we continue to allow contractors or promote the use of inferior wood products or inferior synthetics or products that just don't survive or overcome those porch challenges, what's going to happen is contractors are going to continue to pour concrete, and at the lumber yard, we're going to lose all that material. We're not going to be able to sell the traditional framing packages. We're going to lose the fasteners, the joist hangers, the tools, and the lattice work, everything that's kept lumber yards in business for 100 years, everything that we make commissions on. And contractors are going to go to pour concrete. When they do that, we may get some trials, we may get some forms, but really in the lumber business, we all lose. But if you're offering Aeratis, you're going to have better margins, you're going to have better satisfied customers, they're going to be happier longer. And actually, one of the times I was talking to a lumberyard owner, and he said, "Hey, Chris, your product's great. I would love to sell it, but there's a problem." And I asked him, "Well, what's the problem with selling Aeratis?" He said, "If I sell him an Aeratis porch, I'm never going to get to sell him a porch again." And I said, "Do you realize that if you sell him tongue and groove wood or sell him another product that's going to have problems and you're going to replace?" And I said, "If he realizes you had access to Aeratis, you may not ever sell him anything ever again." So folks look at us, look at the guys, you counter salespeople and you guys in the lumberyard as the experts and as the folks that are there to make recommendations. And as you make those recommendations, I like to the good, better, best approach, if you will. So if somebody has $300 in their pocket and that's all they can spend, they need to replace a couple of boards, man, sell them that wood product, but you should probably let them know that, hey, look, you're going to have to prime and paint all 6 sides. There's a lot of restrictions on whether it can be covered or uncovered. You're going to have problems with the wood, and you're going to have annual maintenance costs between $4 and $9 a square foot. And it's going to rot, buckle, and cuff, and it's going to do a lot of different things because wood's just not what it used to be. But if you really want a better solution, here's this Aeratis Traditions product. It's competitively priced to wood. It's only have to be painted on one side, and you get a limited lifetime warranty on it. And it can be installed with floor nails, staples, or screws. It's for covered or uncovered application, and 100% satisfaction guaranteed. And they'll give you the paint for free to boot. So not too many wood people are going to give you the paint for free. So we're giving you the paint for free, and we're giving you a lifetime warranty. And the wood guys, they're not giving you any paint, and they're definitely not giving you a warranty. So now let's take a look at the best option. There's a lot of people out there that have bought into, no maintenance, no maintenance, no maintenance. And we all know that there's some maintenance to something all the time. But if somebody really wants to never have to deal with paint again, sell them the Heritage or the Legacy, because it comes with that acrylic-based cap. It comes in the 3 colors. It's either Class A or Class B fire rated. It's ADA slip compliant. It fades less than 1% over 20 years. And down the road, if they change the siding color, it can be painted. And it's the most dimensionally stable product on the market. We even warranty against any thermal expansion and contraction. You can use screws, floor nailers, or staples. It comes with a lifetime warranty and little to no installation restrictions. So you can put this below grade, above grade. You can put it in docks. You can use it in any application, covered or uncovered. It does not matter how it gets installed. We just recommend that it gets sloped away from the house because the water will weep between it, but we want that water to shed off and get away from the structure, just like the original architects designed exterior living space to do. They designed porches and tongue and groove to get the water away from the house so it doesn't wick back up inside of the house. So guys, that brings us right to the end of our presentation today. Hopefully this has been informative. And again, I wanted to thank every one of you for taking the time to joining us today and learning about Aeratis.